As ever, the Meg's brand has been plagued with one problem after another, many of which were easily avoided. But the recent issues of having to refund some of the apricot soup purchases, once again, same problems she had the first time around, and the tasteless launch of wine on the late Princess Diana's birthday, who passed away in an alcohol-related car accident, seems insensitive to say the least, has only put momentum behind the negative perceptions of As Ever and sort of solidified negative ideas of Meghan as a person as well. And because she is so fixated on intertwining As Ever and herself as one, then there's no separating the two in the public's mind. If you missed our in-depth look at the wine launch, I will link it for you at the top of the screen, where we discussed how Meghan took the literal opposite approach to what most celebrity-owned or celebrity-backed brands within the adult beverage market. And if you don't mind, click the like button if you would like to, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. So this is a theme for Meghan, for sure. At this point, this pattern and this theme is well established. There's a loose template of what does work in any given situation, whether it's writing a children's picture book, or joining the royal family, or doing a Netflix cookery type show, or launching a pantry goods type of business or a celebrity wine type of business. There's a loose template of steps that people took to have success in those arenas, or lessons that we can draw from the mistakes that people have made and that we've observed in other people. Something as a younger sibling, as the youngest of the family, I always felt like I had an advantage there. I could watch my older siblings and learn from their mistakes and avoid making the same ones. The same goes when you're launching a business or joining a venture or a company or, embarking on any sort of a thing that's new to you. You look at what those who have come before you and done it first did. What did they do well? What were their mistakes? What did you like? What did you didn't? And you take the best of what you can learn and apply it to what you're going to do. But not if you're the Meg. No. We've seen this pattern. She ignores the template that's there. She comes in and she does something totally different. And sometimes different is good. It can be great even. It really can. Doing something different and innovative can, when it comes from a space that is inspired and creative and truly intelligent, has some logic behind it. There are reasons why you want to do something different. It's not just because you wanna. It's not just because you don't feel like complying with what people are asking of you. There's reasons behind it, and that can work, Innovation is a thing. But more often than not, when there's a clear best practice established, it's a situation of, if it's not broke, don't fix it type of thing. So when joining the royal family, for example, following protocol was something Meghan was unwilling to do. And she was not willing to let Harry, for example, the actual royal prince in the situation, go first into rooms or shake hands first and introduce people first. She wasn't willing to let that happen. She would yank and pull and put her arm over his shoulder to be like, let me go first. And she would elbow her way in front of him, all sorts of ill-mannered things. She was not willing to follow the lead of somebody more experienced than her. Harry, he was used to these sorts of royal duties. She wasn't willing to follow his lead or listen to guidelines from the palace or advice from the comms team. No. And none of it was a case of trying to control Meg specifically, but rather to protect her by utilizing the experience that they all had collectively to guide her entrance to the public stage. And she was unwilling to do any of it. No templates, no guidance, no leadership, no. It's the Meg. She leads. Did you not know? And her rejection of guidance and refusal to follow these protocols ended up making her look pushy, unprofessional, gauche, and self-important, none of which is likable. And it was part of her initial downfall, and part of the initial, dislike for her was, why is she acting like this? Why is she so pushy? What is happening with her? Why is she so difficult to work with? And this pattern is prevalent in her business launch she's attempted this year. We're going to take a closer look at the mistakes that she's been making with As Ever thus far, and how unsavvy she appears because she's making mistakes that people avoid now because it's kind of common knowledge. Being new is a natural step in any process, in any space, no matter what's going on. No matter how much intuition or intelligence or talent or skill you have, doing something for the first time, there's going to be some mistakes. There's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. But what Megan's been doing, it goes far beyond just being new to business. It's not that. There's this arrogant, I'm a CEO, I'm a founder, blah, blah, blah attitude and commentary from her on the situation, which is only making things look worse because it shows us that she's not even aware of just how badly she's screwing things up. And thus far, as ever, and the Meg have been unable to gain traction and legitimacy like other successful celebrity brands because of all these consistent mistakes. And also, we've got to set aside the fact that just Megan's an unlikable character, so she's gonna have a lot harder time getting something like this off the ground than somebody who's really likable. But we're gonna set that aside for the purpose of today's chat. A hard pivot from the brand, from As Ever, kind of away from the Meg and kind of pushing reset on their approach, might be able to salvage things, but really first impressions are notoriously hard to shake, and the first impressions of As Ever are really bad. It's unorganized, it's unprofessional, bad tastes to the products, so, the products aren't very good, overpriced, chaos, stocking issues, shipping issues, having to refund things, it's not looking good. But let's take a look at the As Ever product launches first, apart from the wine. Well, really including the wine, but we went in depth into the wine last time. None of these products, none of the concepts for As Ever that we've been presented with thus far, just broadly, overall, have had a clear brand identity. As Ever as a whole really has had no consistent defined messaging that will stand out in any sort of a way. It's just sort of bland, it's just sort of boring and low-key, just kind of sitting there doing nothing, being boring and not tasty. As we mentioned previously, just being like a California lifestyle or extension of the Meg, those don't work. California lifestyle's too vague. California's huge. There could be 20 different versions of that. Whether you're a beach bum or living by a vineyard, totally different situations, okay? Or the mountains or by the lakes. You can't just say California lifestyle. That's way too vague to be a brand identity. Challenging herself to think, what does As Ever stand for? Is it sustainable? No. Is it organic? No. Is it about wellness? Certainly not. Artisan craft? Not really, because nothing seems special enough. Nothing seems high-end enough. Just that it's female-led maybe could be something she relies on, but even that seems kind of silly because she's not sourcing things from exclusively female-owned places. She's sourcing stuff from bigger businesses. A clear story is essential to brand launches like this. If they were to develop a mission-driven brand message, like elevating everyday indulgences with a sustainable California craftsmanship, it might help things, but at this point, it would seem very disingenuous, and that would also mean they'd have to tweak where they're sourcing all of these products. Based on Megan's comments, she thinks that the brand being an extension of her is enough. She thinks, well, it's me, so that's the brand. There are so many issues with that, though. Most prominently, her unpopularity. Most people dislike her, which will not inspire people to part ways with their money to purchase things from her. But also, the Meg doesn't even have a clear, defined public persona. Like, she's tried on so many different versions of herself, which is very unlike so many celebrities whose personalities feel very, very consistent. Think of people like Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. Very well-defined public personas. Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, very well-defined public personas. Like, they have not changed. They are consistent. Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Drew Barrymore. These people are consistent because they're being themselves. They are not trying to, change all the time and trying to convince you to like them. They are who they are, and it's pretty consistent and established. Reese Witherspoon, another great example. She has gone into different businesses and different ventures and is very successful with her book thing. You should look into it if you don't know about it. It was genius. But she's still very consistent. You know what you're getting when you think about Reese Witherspoon, or when she's showing up to something or endorsing something. You feel like you can trust her because she's not changing all the time willy-nilly, and she hasn't changed herself to fit whatever business venture she's involved with at any given moment. Sandra Bullock, like all of these celebrities who've been around a while, the public feels familiar with their public persona. Obviously, nobody knows them personally except for those in their personal lives. But what they show to the public is consistent, is what I mean. And Meghan is not that. She is not consistent in what she has shown the public. We've talked about this a lot lately. I will link the videos if you haven't seen them, like her Eras tour and her identity crisis video that we did recently, where she's trying to push this authenticity stuff. But it can't possibly work, because we've seen so many different versions of Meghan. She's always trying to contort herself into what she thinks will suit what she's doing that day. And that's not a clear message, and that's not a clear identity. And then that is trickling down into As Ever, and it's all very vague and undefined because she's so involved in it and so, in it. Meg comes off totally fake with a cloudy public image. Your impression of Meghan is totally dependent on what day, event, or occasion you saw her in. So she's actually very unfamiliar. Also, Meghan blabs a lot. She runs her mouth so much she can't even keep her stories straight. And her reputation for lying creates distrust in her in general, and thus, by proxy, her brand and her image in general. She makes statements and posts about stuff constantly, yet with her brand, it's almost like she wants to distance herself from it. She's not doing that much promotion or hyping it up. She does announce when the drops are coming, which is the bare minimum, and she does announce that it's sold out, but that feels very contrived and manipulative because, as we've said, she's never provided the number of units sold, so we have no idea if it's sold out of like 50 jars or 1,000 jars. No idea, so telling us it's sold out is completely meaningless. Where is the story about the brand and the products separate from herself? Even when she was on the Aspire podcast with Emma Grede and asked about how As Ever came to be, it wasn't that, I love these products and sharing them with my kids and my family was fabulous and making them is fun. I'm trying to make jam seem more interesting than it is. But if she were to talk about it from that perspective, as that's why As Ever came to be, because of, how much she really loves cooking and food in general and how it made sense. No. It was because she wanted to come up with something to share with the world. She had to sit around for nearly 5 years to try to come up with something to make a business and to make money, basically. That's why she landed on As Ever. And then, of course, these friends that we always are telling her what to do, taking all her agency, telling her, you should write this book, you should do this podcast, you should call it this, you should sell your jam. That's why she did it. It wasn't because it's something that she really felt would be a fun and passionate project. Therefore, As Ever and the brand and the goods, whatever they may be, they could have been towels, they could have been paper cups. It doesn't matter what they were. The As Ever products and brand was just to be Meghan's thing, to give her something to do, something to feel like she's, accomplished something, I guess, or to make money off of. Really, it's all about a vain money grab. And so the brand itself is just her. She has no story and brand identity for As Ever on its own. It's her. A better approach would be controlled personal statements and a launch video, or even an interview explaining why she created As Ever from a real perspective of something that actually makes sense, that doesn't involve her ego and her as a human being, which would build authenticity and drive press, but we know she can't do that because that's not what actually happened. She just wanted to come up with something. The problem of the artificial sellouts is becoming bigger and bigger as we go, because she's only made micro drops available This is creating distrust with the marketplace, and it's creating frustration among the small number of consumers who actually care about getting their hands on the products, but it's also undermining the brand's credibility overall. It's gone into the territory of inaccessibility, which is not good. Controlled scarcity with transparency of the numbers is what works. When people know, okay, there's only going to be 50,000 bottles of this wine available, then I really want to get my hands on it this time. That works. That type of scarcity marketing works because you're telling people how many you're making. But when you don't tell people how many you're making, it feels manipulative and nobody can really trust that it actually sold out, or if you just clicked, oh, drop the inventory to 0. I also find it weird that she hasn't opened up pre-orders, which is pretty common with celebrity drops like this that are direct to consumer. And she's not really being very clear about the launch dates either. Like, we got a little Instagram post about a week before the rosé launched. We didn't have a date to have the consumers build anticipation towards. If she wants to do seasonal drops, which she has said a few times, but she doesn't seem to get how those work or what those really are, because she also then said that she was going to wait until 2026 to put out anything else, except for, of course, the rosé and apparently the sparkling wine. Who knows? Anyway, if she wants to do seasonal drops, then we should know the date. We should know the month and the date that the fall drop is going to happen, and the winter drop and the spring and summer drops. We should know those dates at least one full season ahead. So for example, right now we're early in summer. We should know the exact date that fall pre-orders are opening up and the exact date that the fall products are going live on the website. It should already be out there for people to see and on the website. And it should be sometime in September maybe, or late August. If she were to do that, then she would create a vibe of transparency and her favorite word, authenticity, by being able to then celebrate something like, say, 10,000 pre-orders. And she would also be able to let people know what the actual limited quantity that will be available will be. There's only going to be 5,000 jams, or it's not jam, gloopy, runny, liquid spread. Sharing how many units are going to be available of each product would actually boost the perception. It would allow them to normalize the exclusivity with transparency rather than secrecy, which feels manipulative. There's also an issue with the whole seasonal drop approach in general for Meghan's brand specifically, because these are basic, bland pantry goods. We have liquid jam, alcohol, cookie mixes that are unnecessary. Nobody needs a crepe mix. Nobody needs a shortbread mix. It's butter and flour and salt. You know what I mean? These are not typical seasonal drop goods. You know what I'm trying to say? Limited quantity goods are usually something a little bit more like a holiday themed thing, or a fashion collection. Apparel is very frequently done in smaller drops seasonally. That makes total sense, but she's not doing that. Fashion, beauty, and technology type stuff tend to have limited availability seasonal drops. And also merchandise, if there's a new video game out, there's a limited edition, mugs and cases and things like that, accessories that come out. Those types of drops make sense to be small, limited, short period of time. These are things that make sense to do that way. For example, beauty products, they oftentimes last at least 6 months when you buy them and you're using them. Even if you're using them every day, they're usually about at least 6 to 12 months. Clothing, when you buy it, you have it in your closet for as long as it lasts, or until the weather changes, and then you can save it for the next year. Technology stuff lasts a really long time. So occasional small releases that are structured to sell out on purpose is normal in those industries, in those spaces. And then they make sense also with the pace at which they are utilized by customers. You're going to run out of the beauty product around the time that the next drop will be. Or you're going to run out of, if you buy a holiday coffee that's pumpkin spice, you're going to run out of it around the time that the peppermint flavor is available. That makes sense. When it comes to home goods, decor, pantry goods, we rarely see brands that are exclusively seasonal, the way Meg is setting As Ever up to be. These types of brands usually have core offerings available year-round. So there's regular, like maybe several different regular coffee flavors available all year. And then they release a pumpkin spice in the fall, and they release a peppermint in the winter. And then maybe they have like one or two other special blends in the other times of the year. But their core coffees are always there, just as an example. These collections that are seasonal and limited quantities are added on top of the regular product range around certain times of year. Holiday season is super popular, obviously. Like a lot of companies put out special edition, like even Goldfish crackers put out special holiday ones. You know, these types of things make sense, and it's always on top of what they normally sell. And these are companies that sell various types of products or even like sweets year-round, and then they offer specialties at certain times of years. Or even like Harry and David, which Megan had beef with because she was basically trying to infringe on their trademark with her American Riviera Orchard Montecito. They have normal stuff available all year round, and then they have oranges available when they're in season and pears available when they're in season. And these are things that people know happen every year, and they get excited to place their order because it's only available when it's in season, in peak season. And these seasonal drops are added on top of their year-round product lines, and it drives interest and it drives customers there. And you're also catching people who are interested in the seasonal stuff alone, or maybe that's what caught their attention. But there's also your base of year-round customers who might indulge in those special limited edition or limited availability drops as well. And Megan is not falling into this category because there's no stock available all of the time to carry through. This sort of approach, when done right, helps a brand feel fresh as well because they're regularly offering an expanded selection. Even if it's limited, even if it sells out, the core goods are still there and available. Meg isn't going that route, and so the occasional drops just don't make sense for things like tea. It's almost laughable. Or runny sloppy jam that she's called spread. It's a sauce. It is not a spread if it falls off your knife. So this feels confusing to consumers, and it's limiting interest in the brand. Another thing that's putting people off is the restocking delays, which have undermined the hype. When done right, seasonal drops have a clear launch date, a pre-order opening date, and marketing efforts can be structured to maximize anticipation. It's clear at this point that there's a massive lack of confidence in the brand, extraordinarily low quantities being moved, and or internal deception at play of just inflating these numbers for ulterior motives. And this is worsened by Megan's own reputation for exaggerations and lies. She's been caught out countless times, stretching the truth, manipulating narratives, so it's no stretch for people to get the impression that she's lying about As Ever. And her general disorganized approach is simply bad business. It's almost unheard of, quite frankly, for a founder to be so unprofessional as to confuse potential customers. She told us on a podcast she wasn't going to restock until 2026. And then within days, she released more stuff in 2025. This is just one example of many conflicting messages about her businesses. There is no excuse for that. So why is she making all of these mistakes that seem rudimentary? Possibilities? Vague soft rollout is more so to test the interest, which has a pitfall of a false precedent due to reviewers and critics making up a big percentage of initial sales. An aspirational exclusivity strategy, which is to build mystery and then create demand. But this will never outweigh her popularity, and the bad reputation will overpower this approach almost certainly. Or it could be production and licensing limitations, or even legal regulatory issues like the trademark problems could be delaying things behind the scenes. And they're trying to slap something together, but it comes off as unorganized, chaotic, and desperate. And really, a business like Netflix might not be willing to put up the capital to expand the supply until the trademark stuff is finished, and nobody has any faith in Megan in getting that done anytime soon, that's for sure. The very few benefits to this extreme, false, artificial scarcity marketing technique Include media speculation, which gets the name in the news, and less accountability because if numbers aren't being published, they cannot be scrutinized, and flexibility. If something really isn't hitting and really isn't selling, then they can pivot before things get too established or pouring too much money into products that aren't going to work. But these are all very short-lived advantages. They work for a very brief amount of time, and there are marginal benefits with a very quick expiration date. The public and the consumer bases simply don't have the patience for this type of stuff for very long. It feels like a game. Since there's still not even a trademark approved for any of these endeavors, it's also rapidly diminishing confidence in the brand's legitimacy overall. Without the follow-through and a shift to a more reliable image, curiosity quickly becomes skepticism. So the big question, the most curious part of this is why hasn't she revealed the sales numbers? The most likely reason is that it's very, very low symbolic production, like 50 to 100 jars of jam, 50 units of everything. Everything really, really small numbers, which is called a microdrop. We've been over that before. Revealing her numbers would undermine the illusion of scale, which she talked big game about. It also could still, from Netflix's side, like I said, be to do with the trademark issues and whatnot behind the scenes, but it also could be a little bit of a branding test rather than an actual product launch. They're just still sort of trying to test the waters on this thing. But it also could be, because it's not doing as well as they anticipated, that they are buying out the stock or just closing down the stock, because on their website, they are able to just say no more stock available anytime they want, even if there technically is more stock available. And keeping the numbers private, especially if it's not moving, and trying to get better press by saying that it is working well and that it is selling, gives the team, or Meghan, room to try to tweak things, relaunch, reposition, and not appear like it failed. But the dishonesty about the scale and hiding of the numbers is really hurting the whole situation right now. And the over-involvement of Meghan's voice and vision is, of course, creating a dark cloud over the brand. And on top of it, the whole thing feels a lot more mood board than marketplace. It doesn't feel like something polished and professional and ready for consumers. It feels like a rough draft. An additional problem is Meghan's obsessive, insatiable desire to be in every single promotional moment for eVER. This leaves the brand and her permanently intertwined. For a very unlikable public figure, that's a terrible choice and a big risk. There's no reason to have someone like the Meg so heavily featured in a company's public image. Someone super likable with a big fan base like Dwayne Johnson, as we discussed with Terramana Tequila, is great. But he's also part of the marketing for his Papatui personal care product line. This works for him because he has nearly 400 million followers on social media, a massive fan base, and is hugely popular. He has a very positive approval rating. So not only do his endorsements, announcements, and promotional posts carry a really wide reach, but they're more likely to be positively received. If we saw The Rock stalking his tequila, we may see it as a cheeky, mischievous ad. But the Meg stalking the honey looks silly and even creepy. If she were to take a step back and let the brand have its own identity, it may have a better chance than it does with her obsessive need to make every product and every element about her. But leave your thoughts in the comments. I'm eager to hear what you think and what your first impressions of eVER are. Thank you for joining me for today's video. I hope you have a happy day ahead, and I will see you next time. Bye!